Who were some of your mentors?
My dad, number one. He was a golf pro and then ran the golf shop for many years. And so he always had that like entrepreneur side to him. So like anything that I would do, I'd be like, hey, like I have a question. And so he's like, don't worry, like you're doing the right thing. And like the best advice he ever gave me was something just like as simple as like always do the right thing. Like, don't try to cut any corners. Like, if you have a question, ask someone. It's like not like you're like trying to like be sketchy here. I'm like, okay, always do the right thing. And then, yeah.
That is so great because I think like, you know, there's this business mindset when you're being business oriented of where the bottom line is and numbers, you know, and all this stuff. And I truly believe that if your ethics are at the core of your business and who you are, you'll go much further than anything else. I agree. Let's start from the beginning. Obviously, we've alluded to what the company is, but tell everyone from your own words sort of where the concept came from and how you got the business off the ground.
Okay, so from a young age, I loved organizing. It was like very apparent that I wasn't playing with toys and like reorganizing my closet and like refolding all of my clothes. So it is always something that I knew that I loved. I then became a full-time nanny for 6 years in Boston, and with that came so much organizing. So not only was I like watching your kids, I'd be like, can I also like redo your pantry? And like also your whole fridge is like completely reorganized. They were like, you were an angel.
Yeah.
So I think that is what made me realize how helpful it was to moms and families when I was there doing that kind of stuff as well as childcare. So I actually started Heart & Co. as a nanny agency in 2017. I just found that I was kind of a center outlet for many families and friends looking for nanny gigs. And that was great and it worked at first, but wasn't really my true passion. I'm like, if one nanny was late, I'm like, I don't know, you interviewed her just as much as I did. I like control freak. I'm like, I need to organize. And then one of the moms was like, you should open an organizing branch to your nanny agency. We have so many moms that could use your services. And then from there, that was September 2019. And I opened a branch thinking it would just be like a side gig of what I love to do. And within a month it blew up and I shut the nanny side down and have done this ever since.
That is such a wild story how everything unfolded.
Yes. I remember there was one day that I was like, oh, this isn't how my business started. Like, I'm so sad. And then the next day I was like, that was the best decision of my life.
Yeah. What was that transition like for you? I mean, did you have to do a lot of research or just because it was something you were innately good at, did it feel pretty
So the organizing side was like a no-brainer. I just like those things. Like my clients are always like, how do you know how to do that? Or what? And I'm like, I swear it's like the only thing I'm good at. I don't know. It just comes to me. And so that side I had no problem with. It was more like, how do you start a business? And like, how do I make a website? And like, what licenses do I need? But like, you just keep going and you ask people and you have like mentors that help you. So I just figured it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who were some of your mentors?
So I'm trying to think of my dad, number one. He was a golf pro and then ran the golf club. Sorry, not the golf club, the golf shop for many years. And so he always had that like entrepreneur side to him. So like anything that I would do, I'd be like, hey, like I have a question. And so he's like, don't worry, like you're doing the right thing. And like the best advice he ever gave me was something just like as simple as like always do the right thing. Like, don't try to cut any corners. Like, if you have a question, ask someone. It's like not like you're like trying to like be sketchy here. I'm like, okay, always do the right thing. And then,
That's really solid advice.
I know. I'm like, that's simple.
That is so great because I think like, you know, there's this business mindset when you're being business oriented of where the bottom line is and numbers, you know, and all this stuff. And I truly believe that if your ethics are at the core of your business and who you are, you'll go much further than anything else. I agree.
Yep.
Way to go, Dad.
Oh, my number one fan.
I love that. So for you, the most difficult part was really just like understanding the back end side of things.
Yeah, the concept of like just how to start a business. And I remember when I first graduated, I went to Nantucket for a summer like I always did. And I ended up staying a few more months to organize for some members at the golf club. And at that point I was like, I don't know what to charge. Like, do I even know what I'm doing? Like, okay, I guess I'll take a ferry and go get products and come back. And I'm like, at that point, if I knew a little bit more of how to run a business, I probably would have started it in 2014. But I'm like, that's okay. Everything evolved. So yeah, that part was like a hard concept for me to wrap around. Like, I'm just good at organizing. Like, I don't want to start a business.
You're like, I just want to go there and do it. Right? Okay, so not to be redundant, but like outside of that stuff, anything generally speaking that you sort of wish you had known sooner, something you've learned along the way?
Yeah, so I feel like one of the main things that I've learned, and especially this summer, I hired an intern that has like been my backbone, is that like it's good to ask people for help. Like I would always be like, I can do it all, I can work 24/7. And the amount of clients and like employees in my family that's like, take a day off. Like you have, like I worked like Monday of Memorial Day weekend, and one of my clients was like, I was waiting for you to cancel and like I thought you forgot. I'm like, oh no, I'm well aware.
I was gonna be there.
Yeah, like asking for help and not like trying to get everything done by yourself and not being so hard on yourself and just taking it slow. Like I feel like being type A, I'm like, don't put off tomorrow. We can get done today. It's like, it's okay.
Well, it's so true. I think that like the end product is what matters, right? And so if you're just completely burnt out, you're not doing anybody any favors. But I think that there's this stigma that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Right. When in reality, it's such a strength. Yes. Because you know when it's time for you to take a break so you can recharge and come back better than ever, or like what things you can delegate and pass off.
And that is like, I swear, I mean, I'm like 2 days into 30. I'm like, that is what I've learned within this age rail. I'm like, just ask for help. It's not weakness. Like no one can do everything. And I thought I could, but here we are.
The more you know, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so any horror stories so far? Any like crazy clients or unhappy clients?
So I feel like in just being an organizer, people are always like, oh my God, you must get like so many hoarders. And like, what is the worst project you see? And I'm like, to be honest, I like haven't really gotten such like horrible ones. Or maybe it's that I'm like, oh, I can do this. And if someone else saw it, they would be like, ah. Yeah. So we've gotten like projects that are in like basements with cobwebs and spiders and probably mice because there's traps everywhere. And like those are a little scary to me. But I must say, I tell everyone I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world because I have the best clients ever. Like there's not a time that I'm not having wine before I leave with them or like texting them at all times. And like all my employees are always like, oh my God, she was awesome. I'm like, I know. Wow. So I haven't had one yet and I hope I don't. I'm on a good track. Yeah.
Knock on wood for you. That is really special. It is. And rare too. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what the process looks like from the client, first reaching out, planning, execution.
So we always do a consultation to start off. During the consultation, we'll go over the space or spaces with the client. I'll go over like initial ideas that I would have, discuss products that we would use, which we generally use Container Store. Okay. And then that gives me an idea of how long I think it would take, a good budget for products. And then usually they're like, okay, when can you fit me in? I'm like, now we're a little booked out. But yeah, and it's as simple as that. And the process of going in and organizing, we take everything out of the space. So I always say it gets worse before it gets better. There is like, especially closets, people are like, I didn't know I had this much clothes. I'm like, it's okay. It's just because it's in like mass quantities on your bed right now. And then we go to Container Store, we implement the products. And then from there, we just bring all of their items back into the space. And those are like the things that just come to me. I'm like, obviously this goes here. Yeah. And people are like, what? How did you know that?
What do you mean, obviously? I would be horrified at like how many things are probably like still have tags on them or don't even like not even the right size.
Totally.
I feel
or like duplicates.
I have the same shirt in like 4 different colors. Yeah. So I imagine there's a little bit of vulnerability for each client to kind of let you come in and do your thing. But you talk them through that and you know.
And I have had clients be like, how like this is such a personal thing to have you come into our space and Like, how do you kind of break that? I think that's why our initial consultation is so important, because I really build that rapport with my clients. And I'm just like a bubbly person that comes in and they're like, oh my God, like you can go through anything. And I'm like, perfect.
So each space itself, do you think that the time, like the turnaround time, differs between a kitchen versus a closet versus a pantry?
Yep.
What does that normally look like for each?
So it absolutely varies. It totally depends on how much they have in the space and then the size of the space. But I always make a joke. I'm like we went to Nantucket the other weekend and had like 8 hours, because like we took an early ferry and we were going to take the last ferry. I think we organized like 8 or 9 spaces in 8 hours. And I was like, you could tell me I only had 4 hours and like your 4-story house will be organized. So that's like me not breathing and just like organizing fast. But like a typical day, we can do like walk-in closet, a larger one with another space, like a full kitchen. And that's why the consult's so important, because it gives me a good idea of how long I think each project will take.
Yeah. And how do you normally estimate a cost or make a quote for somebody? Is it based on the room? Is it based on how much crap they have?
So we have an hourly rate. So I feel like we've done so many projects that when I go in, I'm like, oh, this will take like 6 to 8 hours. And I always usually overestimate, again, because I'm just like blacking out and not drinking water or like looking or breathing at that point.
No one takes a bathroom break.
No, never. I'm like, lunch, excuse me. So yeah, I feel like it's usually like in a day we can get such a chunk done. And if it's like one space, I'm like, of course we'll get this done in a day. The only time it's like more is like a huge move in. Or some people are like, do my whole house, which I'm like, yes, I'll be here all week.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
It's the best. Moves are my favorite because it's a fresh start. Yeah. So I'm like, don't put anything away. Don't even take anything out of the boxes. Let me do it.
So I mean, I would imagine for me, like, I'd rather overestimate and then save some change than have to, pay a little bit extra. So that's really smart.
Yeah.
Which space in particular is your favorite to organize?
So when I first started, it was closets. And I feel like anyone that even likes to organize would be like, oh, I would love closets. Now I'm like, if I fold one more shirt, I'm like going to lose my mind. I'm like at that point of like year 3 going on 4. So I would say like kitchens and pantries. Pantries in particular, there's just like so many good products out there that make it like I love to add like some acrylic and some wicker and some metals. So adding those textures, it's like a little interior decorating project for me.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that too. So obviously organization is numero uno priority.
Yeah.
But when you're adding that into someone's space, you get to incorporate a little bit of yourself, right? So are you also, I mean, when you're picking out each container, how the labeling system works, et cetera, you get to like flex that little design muscle a bit. Yep. Is that something that you ever studied or looked into?
Never, but always something that I loved. Like even my apartment, it's like everything I've always wanted and more, and there's like not like one little vase out of place. Yeah. So I've always had that in me, and I always tell my clients, they're like, do you think you could help me? I'm like, absolutely, but don't tell anyone. And then I go to the next client and I'm like, 100%, but I just don't market this. So it is something I love to do. But when you're organizing a space, like half of it is making the space aesthetically pleasing. Mm-hmm. So I want to like maybe get you some pillows and a new rug and like a little plant, because that's going to bring your whole space together. So I love doing it. It just kind of comes to me when I'm doing that stuff. Yeah, we do that often too.
That is really cool. Yeah, I mean,
but keep it on the deal.
Okay, we'll cut that part out of the show, But yeah, because I mean, there's so much. I mean, acrylic versus, like you said, wicker versus. Do you like really like straightforward print or a little cursive? I mean, there's so many different things you can do to make it more sleek and modern, a little feminine, and or girly.
And that's kind of like knowing either the clientele or the space. So like I use like more of like a kid font for like kids' closets or playrooms, and then like more of like a sleek clean for like bathrooms. Like, so it just depends on the space and the client. And most of my clients are like, anything you say, anything you want, like everything is in your hands. And I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, like as long as I don't have to do it.
You're my favorite client.
And we kind of grazed over this at the beginning, but I wanted to go back to it. The clientele, it started off a lot from maybe some of your clients from the nannying space, and then primarily referrals, or where have you gotten the most of your clients from?
It really did start with the nanny stuff. And I remember the day also that I was like, okay, I'm going to pivot. I was like, I feel like I could pitch to all these families, like, let me come into your space, reorganize some things, and it'll give you time back to spend with your kids. So maybe you just feel like you need a nanny so that you can go home and get your life into order, but like your kitchen's already perfect and like your bedroom's great, and like how the kids function in and out for schools is seamless. So that's kind of how I pitched it to them when I first pivoted to just doing organizing. And then from there, like, Instagram is a very powerful thing. Like, I almost did little to no marketing, and posting one before and after picture is just like, I'm like, I am lucky that organizing does well on Instagram, because people were like, that's what it looks like after.
Right, because like you said, I mean, it's not just pretty.
Right.
It serves a purpose. So it's a win-win.
Yep.
It's amazing.